Logan, you were on the call. Myles Garrett, he did it. Tell us everything.
Yeah, right place, right time, I guess. I'm starting my broadcasting career. I get assigned to this game, which probably doesn't look like a great game on paper. The Bengals Browns with neither of them with a lot to play for. But fortunately for me and fortunately for us at home, Myles Garrett is on an epic sack race that hasn't been a record that has not been beat since in a quarter century. Michael Strahan back in the early 2000s. And you know, It I went back and watched all the record-breaking sack plays to see how they called it, because I have to do it justice, right? Like, this clip could last for another 25 years. Zach, you know how hard it is to break, records that stand 20 plus years in the NFL. 17 games or not, for it to stand that long shows you how hard it is. And Zach's offensive lineman, so he knows, I guess, how hard it is, stop people from getting sacks and whatnot. But it was true keep away from Myles Garrett the last few weeks. I mean, he was on pace to get 25 sacks. Say whatever you want, but Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers took him out the game by having the quickest get off of releasing the ball, snap the throw time that Aaron Rodgers had in the entire season. Well, Joe Burrow did the same thing. For 3 quarters of that game, Joe Burrow was releasing the ball quicker than he ever has. They had 2 or 3 people on Myles Garrett every single play. And he was rarely singled up. They ran the ball at him to tire him out. So they did everything they could to neutralize him and to try to play good football. And although Myles Garrett didn't get the sack in the first 3 quarters, the Browns defense outscored the Bengals offense. They had 2 defensive touchdowns and they were winning 14-12. So whatever the Bengals were doing, it wasn't working. Eventually in the fourth quarter, he got a one-on-one snap. And I sat down with Myles Garrett, the night before for the production meeting. And what can I ask the guy who hasn't been asked all year at every production meeting about the sack, what it means to you? We all know the questions you get asked in those production meetings, Zach. They can be pretty repetitive. But I just said to him, I asked him, so if I'm a young pass rusher, if I'm a high school kid, if I'm a little league kid, and I'm trying to get a sack, what's the most important thing I can start practicing now? Like if you had to teach how to get a sack, he said it all comes down to the get off. It all comes down to get off. We all have different moves. We all have different bags. We all have swipe, rip, bull, power, long arm. But all great pass rushers have a great get off. And on that snap, on that sack was the quickest get off of the season of any pass rusher. He sacked Joe Burrow in 2.8 seconds. That is very hard to beat a man, I'm assuming, Zach, in less than 2 seconds and get a sack. So he got a one-on-one. He had the best get off of his season. He got his 23rd sack. Legendary Tom McCarthy, who's a Phillies play-by-play guy, has been in this business 30 plus years, nailed the call. That's his job to nail the call. The only word I came up with was inevitable, because it was inevitable that he was going to get this record. He was on pace to do it. He's such a good guy when you talk to him. He has so much humility about him, how his parents raised him. He had his family in the stands. So it was inevitable. It was deserving that Myles Garrett did it. And I hear a lot of people saying, well, he did it in 17 games. Well, when you play for the Cleveland Browns, you only win 4 games. The other team doesn't throw the ball a lot because they're always winning. So he actually did it in the fewest pass rush attempts that anyone's ever done it in. He has fewer pass rush attempts than Michael Strahan, who did it in 16 games. He has fewer pass rush attempts than TJ Watt did it in, when TJ Watt only played 15 games in his season of a 17-game season. So you can debunk both those theories because Myles Garrett did it in fewer attempts because teams run the ball more on the Browns. I'm sure he faced much more double and triple teams because he doesn't have a great pass rusher across from him like Alex Highsmith or like Michael Strahan had on those Giants D-line. I compare it to Barry Bonds. I know Barry Bonds was on steroids in that era, but Barry Bonds was hitting tons of home runs. He also was the most walked player in the MLB. That's Myles Garrett. He broke a record with the fewest attempts to even do it. So that's how I can simulate the dominance of the season. I'm happy that he did it, and I'm happy on the call. So it was pretty cool. It was honestly a crazy, surreal moment.
Yeah, you talk about the I got a couple things that like I think make it
Yeah.
so impressive. But you talk about get off, and just for people at home, like as an offensive lineman, you have a plan before every snap, and the plan is to beat O-line coaches say beat the guy to the spot, right? So my job as an offensive tackle, I got to get out of my set and beat the defensive tackle to that spot before we start going at it. So when you get a get off like that, your plan is out the window from the jump of the snap. You're playing catch up from the exact snap moment the snap goes off. So it's a bad feeling getting beat off the snap because you're off balance, and then you got this guy who's got all the moves in the world coming at you. But I think the two most important things, and you really kind of hit them, but I've been in these game plan meetings before for elite defensive linemen, and I can tell you that's all they're talking about. They're talking about how do we stop 95. Like you said, Cleveland's got good guys up front, but they got no one else that you're really game planning against. So their entire protection plan that entire week is on 95 and how to stop 95. We saw it the last couple of weeks, obviously Pittsburgh and Cincy doing everything they can, and then like you said, um, I think the most impressive thing is that he just doesn't get the bats at the plate. I mean, they're not in leads at the end of the game. They're not they're not Mahomes back in the day when they're up 20 in the fourth quarter and Chris Jones is going off, and so that alone, I think that alone is the most impressive part of the.
And Zach, I just want to follow. I think we could take 10 minutes to talk about this record, but um, there was about 3 or 4 false starts and offsides because they
Yeah.
changed the cadence up from the very first play.
Yep.
Orlando Brown had about 3 false starts. Joe Burrow was using a hard count about every single play, not
Right.
just on third down. I mean, they were hard counting on first down, right? So much of the game plan was literally to not let not let him not get the sack, but take him out the game,
Take them out of the game, right?
right?
And
And
like
it
find
led
your
it led to
edge. They
quick
got to find
throws.
their edge, and it's tough to find your edge when the guy's getting off in .1, whatever the seconds that's been going around.
I
So
have the
it's just
numbers for
yeah,
you. So
Yeah.
please.
the average time for him to cross the line of scrimmage this season was 0.7 seconds. So that's from the snap to when he crosses the line of scrimmage, fastest in the NFL. On that particular sack, it was 0.23. What? I don't even know how we measure that. Like it's like an insane number. And he also faced the most chips and double teams at over 42% on the season. And in that particular game, he faced the third most chips or double teams. So we kind of combined those two numbers together of any player in a game this whole season. So, and by the way, he's also the number 2 player for number of faced chips or double teams. So, so yes, he's doing it under crazy circumstances. I love that you brought up the amount of, because that was one of the stats I had too. It's like, stop with the 17 games. They're never winning. They're never with, I mean, okay, rarely playing with a lead. But I was excited for you because I was like, okay, well, if the Browns defense keeps scoring, then maybe Joe Burrow will have to throw the ball. So I was
Yeah.
like, all right, maybe we will get there, because I was worried at halftime that we weren't going to see it.
Third fewest. The Browns faced the third fewest pass attempts this year. Third
Wow.
fewest. So he's not on a team where everyone's passing against them. They're running the ball. He had the third fewest. And,
I would love the
you know,
breakdown too of like a run action versus a drop back, like because I bet a lot of those are first and second run action plays where they're not dropping back and letting them get off.
well, they were in that right there. They were in tempo because the Bengals had to score. It was the fourth quarter. They had to kind of get into just 2-minute tempo. And Myles Garrett said, I saw the play clock was going down. They've been switching the cadence on me. They've been chipping me. They've been screening everything they could to kind of neutralize him. He said he felt like it was his last and only opportunity. I called the game. He had very few opportunities to get it. He had very few pitches to hit, essentially. And
Yeah.
he felt like it was probably his last one. They were on the ball going tempo. He saw the play clock was under 5 seconds. So if they would have hard counted there, he would have been about 10 yards offsides. But so he just knew with it being under 5 seconds, this has to be the snap. When they say hike, they have to snap at this time. And you saw that's why they get off. He full sended it. Full send.
Yeah.
That Snapchat went through. He did not care about the results. And so it was cool. Some people said Joe Burrow laid down for it. Not the case. He beat him so quick. Joe knew. Tom Brady and them used to get down for sacks.
I was gonna
You
say
know
you
it's
didn't get split in
inevitable.
half.
Yeah, on that one. So it was true genius. And one last thing I want to share from the production meeting that I haven't told anybody. He says he looked at JJ Watt. And JJ Watt, because Myles Garrett has never led the league in sacks before. So as good as he's been, 120 plus sacks, he's never been a sack leader. This is the first year he's done that. And when he looked at the defensive player of the years, JJ Watt in particular, he had a 4-year stretch where he went like 20, 17, 10, 20. And Myles Garrett believes that he needs to have a stretch of dominance of leading the league. And he said, this is the beginning of my 4-year, 5-year stretch I'm about to go on. So he's predicting that he is now he's reached a new level and it's only going to go up from here. So I haven't told anyone that, but he wants to have his JJ Watt run of Defensive Player of the Years, and he'll be a unanimous Defensive Player of the Year this year. I don't know how many of them we have in our history, Cynthia, but if I find a voter doesn't vote for him for Defensive Player of the Year, they got to see me because I don't know who gets to vote for that, but he should be the unanimous Defensive Player of the Year.
I mean, the votes were due Monday. I know that, the January 5th. So there is no world where that doesn't happen. You know, I can't imagine. I don't have a vote, but of the people I know, I did ask when the votes were due, and it was January 5th. So at least they got to see that. So not to say that wouldn't have mattered, but I still think it's fun to have like the cherry on top of that cake.